Hey YouTube, it's Drlolwutt. I haven't done any videos in quite some time, so you know what I figured? I just might as well throw up my Monarch deck. So there have been a lot of changes since my last video, which was like forever ago, like literally forever ago. And here we go. I'm running two Lads to start. I think Lad's great. It's a win condition, and it's a great card. Um, it can't get. I don't know. I was thinking about running it at 3, but it was getting a little cloggy, like just a little bit. 3 Caius, 3 Ryza. I like 3 Ryza. I think it's pretty good. 1 Gorse, 2 Trag. I'm not seeing a lot of people play Trag in this deck. I think Trag's a great choice in this deck. It can especially hurt heretics. Not only that, but Trag is a lot like Battle Fader. You see people running Battle Fader at 3 as a staple in this deck. But what you're not seeing is people running Tragodia. Tragodia, I treat Tragodia a lot like Battle Fader. Your hand in this deck is usually going to be pretty big, and if it's not big, you're almost always winning. Because if you haven't used the resources in your hand, then because what the deck does is it's +1 every turn. So if you're having like 2 or 3 cards in your hand, your opponent should have like no cards in their hand and maybe like 1 card on the field. So when Trag comes out, when you need Trag to be beefy, he's usually pretty beefy, and he does the same job that Battle Fader would do and just stop the attack. However, what he can do something that Battle Fader can't do, and that's put an offensive and start pushing towards your opponent. For instance, you drop Trag when you got 4 cards in your hand against Dino Rabbit, and then when you draw on your turn, he goes to 3,000. And it's not uncommon for you to have 5 cards in your hand after the draw with this deck. I mean, it's not uncommon at all. Then for the main tribute engine, you got to run the frogs. Is that all on the camera? Hold on, let me see. There we go. You got to run the frogs. The frogs are like by far, I think, the best tribute engine in the game. And then to add just that little bit of extra consistency, I threw in the Sangan. He's kind of slow, but he helps with consistency, and I think he's a good choice in this meta. Here's my personal tech, but I know I shouldn't say tech because techs are like 1 to 2 cards in your deck, and I'm running this at 3. Thunder King Ryo. Thunder King is not that great a card in a lot of decks, but in this deck, he's fantastic. Especially if you bring him out at the right time. If you're reading a Sangan, you just normal summon attack. Especially those rogue matchups, stuff like TGs. This will help you a lot. Not to mention, what this deck lacks is a strong first turn play. He's that card. Thunder King, the reason why people run Thunder King, or at least they used to, is because he was such a strong first turn play. You normal summon this guy against Dino Rabbit, against Windups, against pretty much anything but Insectors. I mean, he just hurts. And even Insectors, if they can't get the Hornet in the grave first turn, he can make some waves. He's a massive beater, and he's going to prevent your opponent from digging into the extra deck to get over him. He's a great card, and in this deck, he's a great first turn, and that's what this deck lacks. So I decided to run him. Right now, I'm running the Trinity. The only thing I would take out would probably be Dark Hole, and that's just because the whole conflicting with Treeborn in the standby and then Dark Hole in the main, so then you don't have any tribute fodder unless you have like a Ronin Totem or a Soul Exchange. I don't know. It's working pretty well at 1, so I probably won't cut it to 0. Another tech choice, Pot of Duality. I'm running at this point triple Soul Exchange, so Pot of Duality at 2 can work all right, actually. Sorry about that. Pot of Duality combined with Soul Exchange allows you for really great plays, because you Pot of Duality, you reveal 3 cards, you grab some whatever power pieces that you need. Maybe you don't have a Monarch in your hand and you really want one, you have a Duality and a Soul Exchange. You Duality, you grab the Monarch, and you can still go off with the Soul Exchange. So Duality's not totally dead, not to mention the fact that you might have a Battle Fader left over from last turn. You might even have a Treeborn that they never decided to kill because you have a Monarch on the field. A lot of the times, if you have a big Monarch on the field and then you just normal summon, or not normal, but you special Treeborn, and you just kind of leave it there, and they don't want to normal summon their little whatever to kill your Treeborn because they know it's just going to come back next turn, and now they're going to be able to attack and get in for over. You're going to be able to attack and get in for over damage, or I will at least. I don't know if you're running the deck personally, whatever. But most people will just set to protect their life points at this point because you got big beefy 2400 beaters. So a lot of the times late game you're going to have Treeborn Frogs just kind of sitting there. And so there's going to be a lot of times, especially with Trag, a token left over from Gores, there's a lot of times when you're going to have fodder left over from previous turns or Soul Exchange in your hand, and Duality is totally live. This deck doesn't really like back row, so I decided to run triple MST. I know it's an interesting choice, especially in a format where people say that people aren't running a lot of back row, but that's just not true. Inzectors run back row galore. Heroes run an enormous amount of back row. I mean, hell, they run like 7 monsters, like 20 traps, and the rest are spells. I mean, like, good lord, it's just like all spells and traps with heroes. It's crazy. So, triple MST, in my opinion, is totally viable, especially because you can activate this bad boy before Treeborn Frog comes out. You draw this guy, you can even activate it during the draw phase. You just hit their back row, and it's whatever. Then Treeborn Frog comes out after you activate this. Not to mention, but game 2 and 3, especially if they side in Chain Disappearance. A lot of decks could side in Chain Disappearance because they don't want to side in Macro. So they want to hit the Dino Rabbit or some kind of matchup. Chain Disappearance is fantastic against the Dino Rabbit matchup. So they'll be siding in. They'll have Chain Disappearances in the side deck. That's gonna hurt you too. So they side those in, and you have these 3 to combat that. Not to mention that, but if I took this thing to locals or regionals or even a YCS, I'd probably be siding 3 enemy controllers, because what enemy controller will do is when you summon the Treeborn and they go Chain Disappearance, you'll be able to chain the enemy controller, stealing their monster, and then sending your Treeborn back into the grave. They miss the target, and then your Treeborns are safe. So it's a great card, in my opinion. 2 Forbidden Chalice. I know it's a spell card, and I know you got to set it a lot of times, but it's okay because I play this card you got to play it really smart. You got to have the Monarch on the field. You got to have something on the field to set this guy or this girl. You can't just set it willy-nilly because you got to be able to have yourself open for some plays, especially if you have like a Soul Exchange in your hand. Remember, Soul Exchange is very, very key in this deck. You don't just use it as a +1. You use it to combo with your other cards. Stuff like if you need to set stuff, if you just need to do whatever, you just keep it in your hand for those times when you can't use Treeborn. Especially if there's an out, where, like, say for instance, I don't know, they have like a Pachycephalo on the field. That happens every now and then, right? So you can Soul Exchange the Pachycephalo, sack for a Monarch. You couldn't have gotten Treeborn out in that instance, so you tributed it, or somewhat. I mean, there's lots of circumstances. That's what Soul Exchange is for. Again, you see how I relate cards back to each other. The deck works with itself, and I don't see a lot of Monarch decks doing that. I just see a lot of really good standalone cards, and not a lot of cards that work with each other like in most decks. You see, especially in the decks of old, stuff like, you guys remember Tour Guide Plants? That deck was the shit, right? So, oh, excuse my French for anybody under, like, whatever, how old, I don't care, whatever. That deck was awesome. And every single card worked with each other. I mean, like, everything just comboed off of itself. You couldn't just throw in a random card that was good by itself, but not good in the deck. You gotta treat this deck the same way. And a lot of people aren't doing that with Monarchs these days. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention about Forbidden Chalice. A lot of the times I'll see people just completely negging the crap out of themselves to bring Lad's attack down, which is hilarious in its own way. But, like, for instance, they'll set a Heavy Storm and then MST their own Heavy Storm. and I'll say, okay, whatever. Forbidden Chalice, chain Forbidden Chalice to your MST. And what people don't know is that Lad cannot chain. So, or Lad cannot activate twice in a chain. I apologize. It can most definitely chain. It just can't activate twice in a chain. So if they activate something, whatever, just to get the attack down, you activate Chalice on top of that. So now you're using that effect to your own advantage. Now Lad goes up to 32, which is huge. It's massive. Not to mention, but it doesn't, even if they get rid of it, you still get the effect in the grave. When he dies, you still get to bring something back. And then at the end phase, when the effect is gone, he recharges, and Lad goes back to 4 negates, which is incredible if you ask me. Especially when they start doing stuff like they want to get it down to, say, I don't know, 1800. So they neg themselves 2 cards, you chain on top of the second card, Lad goes back to 32. They're completely screwed now because their entire play just got bent over backwards and shown the 50 states. I mean, everything was just totally screwed up. Chalice is awesome. And then, finally, Spiritual Water Art Oi. Is this in the camera? Yeah. There we go. Spiritual Water Art Oi. This card does fantastic things in this deck. You can special summon Treeborn Frog like nobody's business. I mean, Treeborn Frog should be coming out. Like, if it's the 3rd and 4th turn, you should have a Treeborn Frog in your graveyard. You have no business playing this deck if you don't have a Treeborn Frog in the graveyard by like, at the latest, the 4th turn. I mean, like, unless you've just been completely running off of Gorze's, Lads, Trigodias, then you should have a Treeborn Frog in your graveyard. I mean, there are times, but more often than not, you have a Treeborn. So, after that 3rd turn, you're usually going to sack for a Monarch, right? And you've got the Monarch on the field. Say the Monarch doesn't die, which happens a lot. I mean, think about your deck, whatever you're playing. Do you always have a way to get over 2400 beater? Probably not. I mean, you dig into your extra deck, sure, but what if you can't? I mean, are you always going to have that out? A lot of the times you're not. So what I'll do is, when I already have my Monarch out on the field, I'll special summon Treeborn Frog. I won't sack for a Monarch, and I'll set this. Then I'll attack with my Monarch, or I'll probably attack with my Monarch first. Then, if my Monarch is still on the field, I'll set this, and then I'll pass. And on your draw phase, I'll activate this. This is effectively Trap Dust Shoot, run at 3, and I can hit your spells and traps as well. Which means, those times when your opponent tops into Monster Reborn... Okay, I should probably read this card since not a lot of people know what it does. Tribute 1 monster on your side of the field. Look at your opponent's hand, select 1 card from it, and send it to the graveyard. So, again, Trap Dust Shoot on steroids. With Dust Shoot, I mean, remember, Dust Shoot got banned. With this card, you can hit your opponent's hand if they have 3 cards, 2 cards, 1 card in their hand. That time when your opponent tops into Monster Reborn and totally messes you up because of that 1 card that they topped. I just activate that. I look at what they topped in the draw phase. Unless it's a quick play spell that they can chain to, I'm taking it out of their hand. They top into BLS with 1 card in their hand. When Dust Shoot would have been totally pointless, I activate this, ditch that BLS. Top into Dark Hole, ditch the Dark Hole. I mean, everything, especially if I can see what they're doing with their hand. Say they have 5 cards in their hand that all depend on 1 card. I can ditch the 1 card and their whole hand is screwed over. If I'm playing heroes, they might have, say they have Miracle Fusion, Gemini Spark, Alias, and, oh, I don't know, what else? I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean. I ditch the Alias, and they have nothing. Unless they have another monster in their grave, everything in their hand is completely dead. The only way that Miracle Fusion would be live is if they have another monster in their hand. And if it's opening hand, then they probably don't. I mean, say I go against Rabbit, and Rabbit tops into the Rabbit, a turn or 2 later. Boom. I get rid of their tour guides, their rabbits, their whatevers. With Inzectors, well, they hate it when you send their dragonflies to the grave. You have no idea how pissed Inzector players get. When they draw, they have like 3 cards in their hand, Inzector, Ladybug, Hornet. Or no, they have Ladybug, Hornet, and Dragonfly. And they're like, yeah! And you're just like, activate, send the Dragonfly. And they're just like, I hate you so much right now. It's hilarious. Anyway, YouTube, that's my deck. I hope you liked it. I hope you liked my explanation. I know this video was kind of long, but I tried to show you some of my tech choices and why I chose them. That's it. Thanks a lot. I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you. Bye.